Awaken to Freedom. I'm your host, Jada. Today's topic does deal with sensitive issues. Viewer discretion is advised. Last week on Awaken to Freedom,
the elder said to the other elders in the governing body, yeah, I'm not letting Jehovah take care of this. I'm a cop and this is a crime, and I'm going to the cops about this. That didn't go over well because he ended up being removed as an elder and disfellowshipped. And then after that, this Watchtower article came out in which it says in paragraph 19 that you can no longer have an exemplary position in the congregation, which would mean like an elder, a ministerial servant, a pioneer, and have a job in which you carry a weapon.
Oh, my word. So that's basically just saying we don't want anybody reporting this anymore. So no more cops. Oh, my God.
Part 2 and the conclusion of How My Family Woke Me Up, Deanna's story.
They talked to me and it ended up getting announced as public anyways. And in the talk, they said, as an example, you may have never been a robber your entire life, but after you rob a bank one time, you will forever be remembered as a robber. So apparently, I was going to forever be remembered as a drunkard from getting drunk at that one party. So I guess in my head, I'm a little bit of a asshole. I thought, all right, I'll make that come true. So I started drinking.
And if you had been a man, that would never have happened to you. If you had been a brother in that, doing that, nothing.
So much of that shakedown all happened because the elder in charge that did all this to me, he was trying to pin his brother-in-law who was at my house that night. He felt his brother-in-law was an alcoholic and drank too much, and he was trying to catch him in the act of being drunk that night, and he thought he had him. And the funny part was, that night his brother-in-law was at my house and had a major cold and had taken cold medicine and decided, and he's, by the way, not an alcoholic, and he decided not to drink that night because he had taken cold medicine. So there you go. You're a complete idiot, buddy, and I don't know why you needed to take me down because you were trying to take your brother-in-law down. So yeah, it was ridiculous. And so I got publicly reproved, and that was where it really began for me, though, besides the drinking getting out of control, because I started drinking worse than ever. I started drinking very privately, just at home. Nobody saw me drinking, so they thought I was fine. But I was drinking most evenings. It started with wine and stuff, but it quickly became, hard liquor, especially vodka was my go-to. And, it wasn't like every night all the time. Like at first, it was probably more like the weekends, but then it crept into Thursday to Sunday, and then it became Wednesday to Sunday, and then it became every day. But it didn't start there. That, it builds. And but then it had been about 5.5, 6 months since I had been announced as publicly reproved, and they came to me. I didn't say write a letter or come to them and say can I get my privileges back, anything like that. They came to me and they were like, so it's going to be about 6 months, so you want your privileges back now, right? And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you're doing great. I'm like, I'm not doing anything different than I was doing before. I'm just at the meetings and going out in service. I can't answer, so I don't answer, but I'm doing everything exactly as I was doing before, and just nobody barely talks to me now. And they're like, right, you're doing great. So we're going to give you back your privileges. Doing a great job, sister. And I knew in my mind, I have barely been praying. I've barely been studying for the meeting. I drink almost every night. I have hateful thoughts towards all of you men. How Why is Jehovah blessing me when I have a worse attitude than I've ever had in my life about this organization? So this is Jehovah's Holy Spirit? Okay. And that was the beginning of me being like, yeah, I don't know about that, but I stayed a faithful witness until I was 45, and that was it. I was 38 at this point. So I did hang on. So, but the drinking just got worse and worse and worse. I think the more I thought about things, more things happened in life. I don't want to get into every little detail of my life, but more things happened that made me see, um, and the fact that I finally got diagnosed as bipolar, and I started on various medications for bipolar, and I would mix the bipolar medication with the alcohol. That's not a good idea. You know, don't recommend that. Don't do that. All these things just caused a lot of issues in my life. And I got to the point where by the time I was 41, 42, I was drinking a fifth of vodka a day. I mean, and I say that, and I don't mean that I was walking around drunk drinking a fifth of vodka a day. Like, I had to get up and do a couple of shots in the morning to ward off the shakes from the night before. So I would start out doing a few shots, then need to take a couple shots again to keep the shakes from taking over. And so throughout the day, I would just keep drinking. And then towards the evening, I would drink enough to get drunk at night. But when you take it from beginning to end, I would drink a fifth of vodka every day. And, at that point, I'm drinking really cheap, crappy vodka, because that's what I could afford to keep my habit up. And then on weekends, I would, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would drink more than that to get really rocked, so because I just wanted everything to go away. And at that point, I think I wasn't saying it out loud ever, but I think I was really understanding how I didn't even know about like Australian Royal Commission. None of that had come into play yet, but I just was seeing how wrong so much. There was just so many things in the Jehovah's Witness organization that made no sense to me. And my life was miserable, and I had never dealt with a lot of the problems and issues in my life, in my childhood, and I had never dealt with any of it. And I was so angry, and I was so hurt and frustrated. And I had tried therapy, but I was so afraid as a typical witness to say what I really needed to say in therapy because I didn't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name. So when I went to therapy, I was not getting anywhere because I would get to a point and then I'd be like, and that's it. I wouldn't say what I needed to say to get real help. So I was holding back, and then I wouldn't tell the truth about how much I was drinking. I would say I was drinking, and I would even say like, and I think I drink a little too much. A little. Yeah, that was an understatement. Like I was, I would be drinking up till the time I, was about to leave the house sometimes, and then I'd drink a whole bunch of water because then it was like, oh, okay, I got to pull myself somewhat together before I go to therapy. It's like, it was a mess. And the crazy part is because I had such a high tolerance to alcohol, most people would have told you if you would say to most people, other than like my immediate family or my mom or a few really close family members or something, they would say, oh yeah, she was an alcoholic. But generally speaking, most people in the congregation, if you would have said that Deanna has an alcohol problem, they would have been like, no, no, she doesn't. I was literally bringing a flask to the Sunday morning meeting and drinking in the bathroom stall, and then spraying myself with perfume and putting gum in my mouth. And nobody had a clue. I mean, I was a raging alcoholic. And the reason I am so brutally honest about this is because I have a channel and I've said some of these things, and I've had people email me and say, "Oh my God, thank you for saying that, because I thought I was the only person. I never knew there were other witnesses in that state of alcoholism, or that low of a place mentally and emotionally, doing all of that." And the other thing is, I found out from rehab, because I've gone twice, is that statistically, 43% of people with bipolar end up being alcoholics as well. And even when I was at rehab, they would break you up into groups of people that are strictly addicts, and then they would have, because they do different workshops and things to help you learn about addiction and how to work with your addiction to find better ways to cope with things and everything. And then they would have the people that were strictly just addicts, and then they would have the people that were dealing with some sort of emotional issues as well as addiction, and people with depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, like all kinds of other things, ADHD. They were in another group because you were dealing with that as well as addiction. And so now you had two things you were battling, And so we would go into another classroom learning about our other, like the fact that we have two things we're dealing with now and how to combat both these things at the same time. And it can be a struggle, because you can do some really crazy things just being bipolar, having nothing to do with alcohol. Um, and, and like I said, I was mixing my bipolar medicine with alcohol. So that is going to make you do some really stupid things. It finally got to the point when I was 45 that my husband, my really wonderful, patient husband, had enough. And not because he didn't love me, he loved me dearly. It was because he loved me that he was like, "I can't do this anymore. Like, you either go to rehab or you got to move out of the house. And not because I don't want you here. Like, I want you here, and you are not you anymore. I don't know who you are anymore. This addiction has taken over, and I don't even recognize you." And he was right. He was completely right. And he had every right to feel that way. I can say that now as, clean and sober, but at the time it felt horrible. I felt like he was abandoning me. I felt rejected and not understood and angry and a lot of things. But I also knew down deep that he would never do that unless he like felt no other option, because we had been together for 25 years at that point. And I mean, really 27, including like dating and all that and knowing each other and everything. And so I was like, all right, I have to take this seriously. In the meantime, I didn't realize, because I was so caught up in my own self and my own selfishness of addiction, him and my two now adult children were really struggling with being Jehovah's Witnesses, and basically had checked out and were going through the motions, but did not believe at all anymore. But I was so in my own world, I had no clue. Like, I did not realize that they did not believe it at all. And again, I was sort of struggling with it too, but I never said anything. I just was going through the motions and doing it myself. So while I was in rehab the first time for 30 days, they sat and had a powwow and were like, "Yeah, we're out. Cannot do this." They all talked and were like, "Yeah, we do not believe this." They all talked about why they don't believe it. And they did it finally allowed them to like look into stuff on the internet. Like, they hadn't up until that point really looked at anything on the internet. It was them talking together, I think, that made them like, we need to like do some digging. And within 30 days, me being in there, they like stopped going to meetings, totally like just woke up and were like, "We are out." And so as they're coming to visit me, my husband and my son, they both grow a beard like that, like in 2 seconds. And beards back then, this was years ago, were not allowed. So each week they would come to visit me at the rehab. I'm like, because it was a pretty far away, so they'd only come to visit me once a week. I was like, you have a beard. Did you go to the meeting this week? What are you doing? And they'd be like, we just needed a break this week. And then the next week the beard was even thicker. And I'm like, so you didn't go to the meeting again? What's going on? And so that was interesting me. But in the meantime, me being at rehab was also really telling for my story of waking up, because here I am with, the worst of the worst worldly people that are all addicts and alcoholics and the worst people on the planet. And they were wonderful. They were the most loving, wonderful people, because even the counselors and a lot of the nurses and stuff at most rehabs are recovering addicts and alcoholics themselves. I don't know if people realize that, but they were people a lot of times that were in the same, rehabilitation centers, got clean and sober and have been sober for like 10, 20 years now and work at the same facility they got sober in. And I love that, and I didn't know any of this, like how would especially as a witness, you are a lot of people don't know this, but especially as a witness, you don't know these things. And so here I am again with, the most evil, worldly people of them all, the addicts, and they're these lovely, wonderful, accepting people. And when I told them I was a Jehovah's Witness, I thought for sure I'm going to get persecuted, like they're going to be all, like, oh, she's one of those witnesses. And they were all just curious. Like, they were like, oh, I've never had, like, talked to a witness like this up close and been able to ask questions. Can I ask you questions? I was like, sure. And they would ask me stuff. Well, why don't you guys do this? Well, I had a cousin that became a witness and they just stopped talking to us and we didn't understand why, stuff like that, which when they said it to me that way, and let me tell you, addicts are just straightforward. There's no filter. So they would just ask me questions and I would be like, huh, that is true. Like when I saw it from their point of view, they weren't saying that they shunned their cousin that became a witness. Their cousin that became a witness stopped talking to them. And I never thought of it from that point of view before. It was like, oh, so really the witness ditched them. It wasn't the other way around. And so all these little things were playing a part in me thinking. And then by chance on TV came the Leah Remini Scientology thing, which I had been watching the Leah Remini Scientology videos and found them very interesting. A little too close to home, quite honestly. But the Jehovah's Witness one came on while I was in rehab. And I'm like, so I didn't know it was on. And the TV was out in like the main, like, common area where everyone could sit and there was like couches and everything. And so everyone would just be like, all right, let's vote. What channel are we watching? What is everyone going to watch? Because there was only one TV in there. And it came on and everyone's like, oh yeah, let's watch this. And then when they realized it wasn't Scientology, it was Jehovah's Witnesses, they were like, let's go get Deanna. This is her people. So they all come in my room and get me. Sure, I want to watch, thinking I would want to watch it, not realizing. So I come out and I don't really get what they're trying to say to me. And then when I see it, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? I immediately am like, this is apostate 101. And I didn't really watch it. And I only watched like maybe 5 or 10 minutes of it. And I couldn't tell you, I mean, I've seen it since, so I know what they say. But at the time, I couldn't have told you really what they said. All I took away from it was, these are real Jehovah's Witnesses. They're talking like real Jehovah's Witnesses. They're saying Jehovah's Witness words. These are not actors. Actors could not get the nuance that perfectly. And that scared me. I was like, they're telling real things. And I was like, I don't feel really good. And I left. Then they all watched it and were like, oh. So then they didn't know what to say to me. And everyone was just sort of like, I'll just let it go. And the one thing I did hear was that they were talking about CSA, and I knew about my father-in-law. Now you have to understand, taking it all back, we thought we were the outliers. We thought like my father-in-law was this one insane story. Like I now know everything I told you now, but at the time when I was young and we thought we were this one insane story that happened in America. It maybe happened here or there once in a great, great while. But to think this happened very commonly, like in a lot of congregations all over the place, never dreamed it. Never dreamed it. So when that also got mentioned, I was like, what now? And my brain shut down. Like, I can't think about this. And I was already dealing with my addiction and everything else. I was like, this is too many things to think about. I can't think about this right now. So I just turned it off, and I couldn't dwell on it. But in the meantime, my husband saw it at home, and he asked two women that he had worked with for a long time and had a lot of respect for. He said, look, I need you to watch this, and give me your completely honest answer of what you think about it, because you know I'm a witness. And I need you to not hold any punches. Like, I need you to tell me your gut, honest reaction to this video. And he said the one woman tried to be very diplomatic and well, I mean, it's not good and blah, blah. And the other one was like, oh, dude, run. You are in a cult. And so, and he loved both. He's still friends with both these women. He works with them still, both. And, that was, his experience. So we both saw this. I didn't watch it all, but he did. And that also had a lot to do with me eventually waking up, but him waking up very quickly. So I came home from rehab this first time. And as we're driving home in the car, it was an hour-long drive home, him and the kids tell me, yeah, just a side note, we are not going to be Jehovah's Witnesses anymore, and we're not going to go to the meetings anymore, and we're not going to go out in service anymore, and we don't believe it's true, and just letting you know. And I'm like, what? I'm like, do you want me to go buy a bottle of vodka on the way home from rehab? Like, what are you trying to do to me, people? And, I'm like, all right. And I will say the things they did really well. And I have a video actually about this on my YouTube channel that I really highly suggest people watch. And can you wake up a loved one? And my answer is no, but there are things you can do that can help or hinder someone waking up. And that's what the video is about. But anyways, so I was like, well, what is happening? And I didn't ask them pointed questions, but I did. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. What? I don't understand. What happened? What happened while I was in there? I just kept asking what happened because I thought some huge thing must have happened. And they were like, no, this has just been a long time coming. You were just so drunk you didn't realize. And I'm like, well, that's obviously probably true. I can't deny that. And I'm like, all right, well. And I finally was like, well, okay. And I didn't ask a lot of questions, and they didn't really give me a lot of answers. And that was the smartest thing they could have done, because they didn't say that organization is a bunch of crap and they're all evil. And they were like, if you want to be a witness, you should be. And we will back you up. If you want to go to meetings, you should go to meetings. If you want to go out in service, we will not stop you. However you want to live your life, you should live your life that way. We are not here to stop you from doing whatever you want to do. You need to be you. And I will have to tell people that was the smartest thing they could have done. Was that what they really wanted to say to me? No, they wanted to say to me, you need to come with us. But they knew I needed to figure that out for me. And Also, I was in a very delicate place of just recovering from alcoholism. I think they knew they really needed to tiptoe because of that as well. And they wanted to be as supportive as they could possibly be. I was coming home, I was doing AA meetings every day, I was doing this and that. The interesting thing is, I got no support from my local congregation. So I came home, and the congregation I had switched, so that terrible congregation that all that trouble happened with me and the elders and blah, blah, blah. We had left that congregation because it was where we should go to. It's like where I still live. It's literally 5 minutes from my house, the Kingdom Hall. I could spit on it from where I'm sitting. That's where we should technically go, and it's where we had been going. But because of that whole mess, after I got my privileges back, we moved back to 25 minutes away, the congregation I grew up in, because I liked all those people way better. So we had been going there, and it was a lot better. I mean, it still wasn't great, obviously, because I was drinking and everything, but at least it was a nicer group of people. And unfortunately, we knew this was coming even before, when I was leaving for rehab. They had sold the Kingdom Hall, and the congregation had been dissolved. And they told everyone, find other congregations to go to. And they told me I should go back to the Kingdom Hall that I hated. So we went, when I came home from rehab, to one last meeting at my Kingdom Hall that I loved, and the people I loved, and that's where my parents went, and a bunch of other people that I'm family with and love and everything. Not too many family members, but a couple family members and everything. And then I got assigned to the Kingdom Hall I hate. So I went there. Nobody looked at me. And my own brother-in-law, my husband's brother, and his wife, who I had grown up with and known since I was 5 and she was 9, and we raised our kids together, and we had been in each other's wedding and been best of friends. I mean, she spoke to me, but was not really helpful or encouraging. Um, you know, I asked her to save me a seat because I was tired of sitting by myself, and she told me that she needed to save seats for a couple of Bible studies she had, and just it would be too much for her to save a seat for me. I was getting no encouragement or help.
Or can I just ask, sorry, are they not giving you any support because you went to rehab?
I
Do
think
they
they
not like that?
were like, so my old congregation, the one of the elders there, and unfortunately he has passed away since. He was one of my favorite people. He was not only an elder, but he was an actual doctor. He was a surgeon, and he actually was at Bethel for quite some time, but I don't want to like give his name or get into his credentials or anything. But he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and he unfortunately passed away of cancer a little bit ago. But because he had a medical background, he was who was so kind about me going to rehab. And he was very much of the mindset that this is a disease. You need medical attention because alcoholism is a medical disease, and you need to go get medical help for your disease. And he made sure the other elders in the old congregation that I loved all saw it that way. And so no action had been taken with me whatsoever, like reproof, nothing this time, even though I had been reproved for drunkenness before. No action when I went to rehab had been taken against me in any way, shape, or form. I had not lost any privileges, nothing. But we also went to them and said, like, I'm falling apart. I'm drinking too much and I need to go to rehab, just so you guys know, so you don't think I just fell off the planet. In the meantime, my husband doesn't even want to be a witness anymore. He didn't mention that to them, but at the time, he just needed to get me in rehab and get me pulled together. So that elder was instrumental. I mean, I can't even talk about him too much because I'll start crying. He was such a wonderful person. But anyways, so I didn't get in trouble. And then I went back to the congregation where the elder who made sure I got punished for my drinking was. And he was probably livid that they did nothing about me and my drinking, and that I went to rehab and there was no consequences for my actions. And so I'm sure he was taking the lead in making sure these other elders were treating me not so nicely. They just were ignoring me. Like I would walk in and I would go up and be like, hi, I'm so, like I was trying to be positive, like I'm happy to be back and, which wasn't totally true, but, I was like trying to be positive about everything. And I was like, I'm happy to be back here. It's so nice to see you again. And, yeah, I'm really working on, my alcoholism, because in rehab, they tell you, you need to talk about it. Like the way you get through and help yourself in recovery is to talk to people about it. And it's different for everybody. Some people are more private about it, but because I'm such a social and talkative person, part of my recovery is needing to talk about it with people. And so I needed the encouragement and I needed to say to people like, I'm 2 months sober now and I'm doing so great. And I needed people to say to me, that's wonderful. Like, I'm so happy for you. And that's all I needed. I don't need a party, but just little verbal encouragement is all I needed. But when I would say to anyone in the congregation, like, oh, I'm 6 weeks sober, like when I had just got back and, here I am 6 weeks sober and I'm feeling really good about it, they would just be like, oh, that was their whole response. Like, not like, that's great. They would act like I just said I had sex with somebody outside of marriage. Like, I'm like, this is a good thing, people. Like, I'm doing a good thing. Like, I normally drink every single day and I haven't for 6 weeks. This is a good thing. You should say, great. Great job, Deanna. That should be your response. But they would just look at me and be like, oh, okay. Uh, that's great. And then run away from me. And I'm like, and these are people I've known my whole life, and I'm like, I don't understand why this is so a difficult, like, thing for you to, idea for you to grasp on how you tell someone, good job. And then I started coming in late sometimes on Sunday mornings because I would go to AA before the meeting because I was trying to get to an AA meeting every single day because that's what they encouraged at rehab. And And finally, one of the elders, one of the few times they talked to me, was like, so why are you coming in late every Sunday? And I'm like, oh, because I go to AA before I come here, but I don't stay for the whole meeting because I want to get to this meeting, obviously. So I go there for, a certain point and then I leave and come here. And he's like, so you're going to meetings that are Satan's way of getting sober? Was his exact words to me. And I'm like, well, there's no program here for me to get sober. He's like, it's called prayer and service. And I said to him, because I have a bit of a mouth, I was like, well, I did that for 45 years, my entire life, service and prayer, and that wasn't keeping me sober. And he did not like that. And we didn't have any further exchanges. So, yeah, I don't think most of the men in that congregation liked me because I always had an answer for them. I was not one of those women that were just like, okay, brother. I was like, wait a minute. So, wait, I have an answer for you. So they didn't like me. So anyways, yeah, so I was just getting attitude the whole way around. There was like one sister who was so sweet and she could tell I was really struggling and she started saving me a seat at every meeting. And I wish I could like say her name and give a shout out to her because she's a sweetheart. But she was one of the few shining moments in that congregation of somebody who really did make me feel loved, but so few and far between. And then finally, there was a woman in the congregation that that she came up to me and she didn't even really know me that well. She had just moved in to the congregation. She was from the South. And her son went to the congregation. He was an elder in the congregation. And I think they had to have her move up because her health was not doing as well, and they needed to keep an eye on her, and they moved here, and her son moved here because he had a job here or something like that. I don't know. So I didn't really know her. I don't even remember her name. And she was a serious busybody and was always in everyone's business, from what I understand. And I don't even know if she knew my name, but she obviously knew my story because my family had never gone to the hall since I had come home from rehab, other than my son had come to a couple of meetings with me because I begged him to. And he went out of just because he could tell I was falling apart. And she she says to me in the bathroom, "So where's your family?" And I thought, how do you know if I have a family or not? Like, I'm always here by myself. And like my son coming, how would she even know if it was my son or not? Like, he's this huge guy and looks older than he is. Like, how would she know who he was? So anyways, I said, "They're not here." And she was like, "Well, where are they?" I'm like, this is such an odd question. And I said, "They're at home." And she's like, "Well, why aren't they here?" I'm like, "'Cause they're not." And she's like, "Well, do they used to come here?" So I'm like, "You obviously know all the gossip, lady." I said, "Yeah, they did." And she's like, "Well, if they don't get themselves here, they're not going to make it in the new system." And I was like, "Well, thank you. What a kind thing to say." And I walked out of the bathroom. I went and got my books off my seat and my purse. I never walked in the Kingdom Hall again. I was like, if that's encouragement, uh, yeah, I don't have time for that. And it wasn't even that I didn't believe the doctrine or anything else. It was how I was being treated. And then my son, like I said, had been coming to some meetings with me when I was like really having a down day and having a hard time. Um, and I would always be like, everyone would, of course, love bomb him. And he is super social. He is bigger than life. He's Thomas. Everybody knows Thomas. Everyone loves Thomas. He sings. He plays like, I don't know, 5 instruments. It's very dynamic. And I was just Thomas's mom. I didn't even have a name for years. I was just Thomas's mom. I mean, literally, I would go to conventions and assemblies and people would be like, "Are you Thomas's mom?" Like, I seriously had no name for years. So that tells you what kind of kid he is. So, yeah, so he would go with me occasionally because he knew I was just having a bummy night. He would go with me to like a Tuesday night meeting, and he would get love bombed. And then when we were coming home, I would be like, "Wasn't that great? Weren't you like so happy to see all those people?" And he would be like, and I was like, and I would act like, "And wasn't it nice to hear the message?" And he would be like, yeah, the message, no, it's total garbage, mom. Like, I no." And he's not gonna tell me a lie. And he goes, "And it's nice to see the people, but they're not gonna talk to me unless I keep going. Like, they're not my real friends." And I knew down deep, like I kept wanting to like encourage him to come back, but he only came with me like, in 6 months, a handful of times, but I knew he was right. And he said to me, he's like, "I'll get a text from one of them." He's like, "My phone number hasn't changed." He says, "They could be texting me all this time, but none of them are texting me." He says, "I'll get a text from one or two of them saying like, 'Oh, I hope to see you next week at the Sunday meeting.'" He goes, "And when I don't come, they won't text me again because they're not my real friends. He says, "They could be my real friends if they leave, but as long as they're stuck in the organization, they don't know how to do anything other than what the indoctrination tells them." And I was like, "Oh, I hate that my freaking 20-some-year-old kid knows more than I do. This is so irritating." Like, he's right, And then one night when we came home from one of those meetings, I finally got the nerve to say to him, "So, I finally had the nerve to say, like, what made you stop believing?" And he was smart. He didn't go down the doctrinal route. He didn't start telling me all of the ridiculousness of the doctrine, even though he knew all that was true. Um, he said to me, he was a regular pioneer. And he said, when I went to pioneer school, he said, they brought all these little tidbits out about different things in the Bible. And he says, and I realized I had never really sat and read the Bible cover to cover. He's like, I probably technically did because of the Bible reading. He's like, but I had never like really read the whole thing cover to cover. He's like, so after Pioneer School, at first, he goes, I sat down and read the Bible cover to cover. And he goes, and that was the beginning of the end for me. He goes, because I realized that book, I don't agree with it. He goes, and I'm not telling you to agree with me. He says, but I highly recommend that you read the whole Bible for yourself. And when he came about it from that angle, it made me less defensive because he wasn't challenging the Jehovah's Witness view of the Bible. He was just challenging, like, is the Bible correct? And I, as a witness, I thought, well, I can help him see that the Bible is true. Like, I can do that. I can help him here. So that made me not as defensive, and we could have a reasonable conversation. And he brought up some things that he didn't agree with. We had a very interesting conversation. And then he added in little tidbits of Jehovah's Witness things that were nonsensical, but he didn't make that the whole conversation. And I was like, I look back now and think, wow, he is one smart, like 23-year-old kid. Because he really made me think. But that conversation made me have the nerve to finally say to my husband, okay, so what was it? What made you stop? What made you stop believing? And my husband was smart also, because he said to me, I'll tell you, but you have to know you can't unhear what I tell you. And are you ready for that? And I was like, what? And he was like, I'll tell you, but you can't unhear it. So you have to be sure you want to hear what I have to say, because you'll never unknow the things I have to tell you. And by prefacing it that way, it made me like, he's real serious. Like, he's not just trying to lay a bunch of crap on me. He really believes this, and he must have come. And my husband's highly intelligent. I hate telling him that. I hope you got to take that part out of the video. Don't let him know I think he's highly intelligent. But he is. And when he researches anything, like even if we go on vacation, the amount of research he does to figure out what resort we're going to go to is insane. So I know that when he does research, it is like full on. So I thought, oh boy, if he's saying this to me, what number one, what could he know that I don't know? Like, I was sort of thinking that, but then it was like, oh boy, he must know something. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me think about it. I don't know if I want to know this. And then I finally was like, okay. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but it had to do with the Australian Royal Commission, because he knew the stuff that got to him was doctrinal. But he knew for me, like 607 BCE, I would be like, whatever. 1914 stuff, I'd have been like, nah, that's sort of stupid anyways. I would have blown all that off and not cared that much. And I think people need to realize what made you question the organization is not necessarily what's going to make somebody else question the organization. And he knew the things that made him question. We are two very different people. I'm more a touchy-feely, emotional person. He's a very analytical person. So, and he knew, because of my background, because of his dad's background, he knew that the Australian Royal Commission would probably speak to me more than anything else. So that's what he brought up. And he didn't show me a video right away. He just told me about it. And he said, when you're ready, I can show you and give you the information. But here's what it is. And he's like, and I can back it up with information when you're ready to see it. And giving it to me in little pieces like that was exactly the right way. And then slowly but surely, it all just fell apart. I threw up for 2 days. After I finally watched everything, I threw up for 2 days straight once I realized it was all a complete lie and it was all horrible. I couldn't believe it. So that was my waking up process. But I went back to drinking for a little while because I didn't have it all figured out. But I got about a year and 8 months ago, I had already started my YouTube channel and I was in the midst of it, and it's all documented. You can go watch all of the videos about it. But something happened and it made me finally realize I needed to get myself really pulled together. And I went to rehab a second time, but this time it was not under my family saying, you got to go or we're done with everything. We can't take it. It was because I was like, I got to make a call and I need to go to rehab. I want to go to rehab, which is go to rehab no matter what, if you can, if you need to. But like, going because you want to go is the best reason if you can do it, because you know you need it. And it's scary, I know, but it is really, it can be life changing and wonderful, even though it's a tough moment to get through. And I went again for 30 days to a different rehab. I did not love the first rehab. I really liked the second rehab. As far as liking a rehab can go, none of them are exactly fun. But it was a much better experience. And again, I chose it. And I also realized that AA was not for me. I'm not downing the program by any stretch. I just think everyone needs to find what works for them. As an ex-witness, I found AA to be very meeting oriented, very higher power. That does just not suit me, but if it suits you, that might work great. And so go for it. If you, you know, if you think that would work for you and you are struggling with alcoholism, do it. It's a free program and there's a lot of wonderful people in AA. I can say that. I met some wonderful people there that really did help me, and I learned a lot from them, but it just overall, the program didn't work for me. There's also a program called Smart Recovery. I don't know. I know it's online and it is secular, so it's not in any way Christian based. And it's also free, and it's meetings and everything are online. It's a wonderful program as well. So if you're also looking for some way to help you if you're struggling with addiction, it's another wonderful program. And it truly is based for any addiction. If you are dealing with drugs, alcohol, gambling, anything, it's a great program, Smart Recovery. So that's out there if somebody's looking for help. But in the end, I ended up personally pursuing, I have a therapist I found, though she was not based in cult recovery, she was very willing to work with me. And she's been great. Like, even I've given her YouTube videos to look at of different XJW channels and stuff, and she's watched them. She's been amazing. And a shout out to Holly if she watches this. And I just love her. She's been a great therapist. And working with her and yoga and meditation have been invaluable. Like, I can't say enough. For me, that has been such an amazing tool for recovery. But I thoroughly believe, and some people would find yoga like so boring they would lose their mind, I'm sure. So I truly believe you need to find what works for you for recovery. Everyone's, perfect little melting pot of what works is going to be different. And I think that's true of even, cult survival. Everyone's, cup of tea is going to be a little different, and that's why it's good there's so many XJW channels out there too, because, some people like a soft landing place, some people like a little bit more of a snarky personality, some people like just tell me like it is, everyone has a different personality. And that's what's wonderful about leaving the organization is we don't all have to put on that fake new personality anymore and pretend to all be robots. We can all be ourselves. And, that's what I always, that's the one thing I did continue to preach on my YouTube channel, Just June, was at the end, my tagline is always be yourself and be well, be you. You don't have to be that new personality anymore that the Jehovah's Witnesses told you had to be all that time.
Well, you have quite a story there, Deanna. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming on here today and telling your story. It's so inspiring because I know that there's going to be hopefully people out there that'll be watching this that are waking up themselves and dealing with things like alcoholism or, different obstacles in their life. And your story is so inspiring to know that going to rehab, it's not, we were told to deal with everything in house when we're witnesses and to know that. And, they think when they go there, it'll be bad association, but that is so not the case. Like you said, those people were so kind and loving and warm and accepting of who you were. And
You're
that's
always
what
going
you
to come
need.
across a couple crazies in there, don't get
Of
me wrong,
course,
but
of
but it's
course.
everywhere in life, you know.
Right. But for them to freak us, to freak everyone out about going because it is such a, bad association. I mean, that's why they tell us not to go to university too. They don't care about the education particularly. They don't want you learning something or associating with people that are going to talk you into the common sense that you should have. But, so thank you so much for sharing that brave story and the story about your sharing with your father-in-law. That I'm going to post. You sent me the documents there, and anybody that wants to see them, they're. It's a very true story. It's sad, but it's a true story. And I'm
Yeah,
also
it
going
is
to put
sad.
the link on there to the SMART program that you were talking about for
Yeah, smart
alcoholics.
recovery. Hmm.
Smart recovery. I think I will share
Yeah.
that on my website. So if the and awakentofreedom.ca also has several therapists on there that deal with cult recovery. Some of them are ex-JWs that now are counselors, they're therapists, or they're coaches. I have a list of different people that, if anybody is searching to leave and was looking for help, they can absolutely reach out there as well. So I thank you so much, Deanna. It's so appreciated. Lovely to meet you.
It's so nice talking with you and have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon again.